Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for the Dell and Betty Bumpers Distinguished Lecture Series. I'm Stacy Leeds, Dean of the Law School, and we are pleased to play a supporting role to the Bumpers College of Agricultural, Food, and Life Sciences on this year's event. The School of Law shares a commitment to food, agriculture, and economic development with the Bumpers College. Our LLM program in agriculture and food law has served our state, nation, and the world for more than 30 years. This is a rich part of the law school's history, and it will continue to be an area of distinction for our bright future. We are honored to host today's lecture in the E.J. Ball courtroom, and we're thrilled to welcome Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack, Senator Dell Bumpers, and his wife Betty. Thank you all for joining us. We're honored to have all of you in our facility today. At this time, we would like to share with you a video prepared by Senator Bumpers, followed by a message from Chancellor Gerhardt. Thank you for being here.
Hello, I'm Dale Bumpers. Let me thank you for attending today's event. This is the highlight of the year for the College of Agricultural, Food, and Life Sciences. It's always a treat to welcome folks to Fayetteville to show off our beautiful state and campus. Today's lecture is a chance for the people in the college and the University of Arkansas to hear from key decision makers, not only in the businesses of foods, but also in national and international policy. It also exposes our students to the real world and to the global marketplace. Every day in classrooms and laboratories, our students and faculty are diligently working to improve the lives of Arkansans, while also benefiting the nation and indeed the world. By debating policy and ideas, and by tackling issues such as obesity and nutrition, and performing meaningful research, they're making the world a better place for our farmers and our families. I couldn't be prouder to be connected to the Bumpers College and the University of Arkansas. It's a very special place. Betty Bumpers made the health of our children her life's mission. For example, when I was governor, she organized immunization for 300,000 children on one Saturday afternoon, making them healthier and saving untold lives. She's a walking testimonial to the power of what one person can do to make a dramatic difference. My hope is that every person in this room will also tackle many of the issues facing Arkansas and the nation. We'll all be the beneficiaries. Thank you very much for being here today, and thank you for your support of the Bumpers College and the University of Arkansas.
That was a great video. Thank you very much. And I actually think, ladies and gentlemen, that instead of asking the Bumpers to stand, I'd like to ask our audience to give them a standing ovation. Senator? Thank you so much. Before Secretary Vilsack begins his lecture, I am looking forward to hearing his words very much. I'd like to say just a few words about Dale and Betty Bumpers. It's difficult to overstate the impact they have had on this university, the state of Arkansas, and indeed our nation. In light of today's political environment, too often exemplified by discord and gridlock, the Bumpers were extraordinary for their ability to rise above partisan politics and work for the good of everyone. Dale Bumpers always appreciated the relationship between research and scientific advances. He understood that government had a responsibility to promote and advance research. He also knew that university research was critical to our fortunes as a state and as a nation. Over the course of his career, he helped to secure more than $80 million in funds for facilities and programs that directly benefited this campus and our state. You can see his leadership across the campus, the John W. Tyson Building and the Center for Excellence for Poultry Science. He helped make that happen. The Poultry Health Laboratory, he helped make that happen. The Research Feed Mill, he helped make that happen. The Pilot Processing Plant, again, his handiwork. And the USDA ARS Poultry Production and Product Safety Research Unit, all of which are based right here on campus, and all because of Senator Dale Bumpers. Additionally, he secured funding for other campus units, such as the Food Safety Consortium, the H.R. Rosen Center for Alternative Pest Control, the National Center for Resource Innovation Southwest, the High Density Electronics Center at the University of Arkansas College of Engineering, and the Dale Bumpers National Rice Research Center in Stuttgart, Arkansas. His commitment to the College of Agricultural, Food, and Life Sciences is unrivaled. Some years ago, I was actually hiking in the forests of Arkansas, and I took a picture of a rock with Senator Dale Bumpers' name carved on it and sent it to him. I later learned that there are 3 or 4 other rocks just like that scattered around the wilderness areas of our great state. Thanking the senator for his commitment to conservation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when they start naming rocks of nature after you, you are indeed important. And lo and behold, I even stayed in the Dale and Betty Bumpers suite at the Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs. I understand that's where you had your honeymoon. Dale and Betty, you are everywhere. Yes, everywhere. There was never any question that the college should be named in honor of its greatest patron and guiding spirit. Dale Bumpers also had a long-standing concern for child wellness, nutrition, and healthy lifestyles. He was not alone in this concern. Betty was a kindred spirit, and one of the fields where she made a dramatic difference was in the area of immunizations, as you heard on the video. Due to the advocacy and efforts of Betty Bumpers, Arkansas went from having one of the lowest rates of immunizations in the country to one of the highest. She was instrumental in creating a cooperative model for public health that was adopted by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, programs that are now across the country. Betty Bumpers was at the center of national immunization efforts and federal initiatives that have seen immunization rates rise to 95%. Ladies and gentlemen, countless lives have been saved as a result of Betty Bumpers' efforts. She has also been a longtime advocate for nuclear arms reduction and founded Peace Links in 1984. In 2000, President Clinton appointed her to the board of directors of the Institute for Peace, a bipartisan board established to promote international peace and conflict resolution. To this day, she is a passionate advocate for world peace, serving on the National Peace Foundation Advisory Council. Dale and Betty Bumpers are living proof that government, using universities as their instruments of progress, can have a powerful and positive impact on the lives of its citizens. They are vast and generous souls whose life work has been the betterment of humanity, and they have an abiding faith in the improvement of the human condition. In that mission, they have been wildly and heroically successful. We've been blessed to have them represent the state of Arkansas so ably, and it is a great honor for this college to bear the Bumpers name. Years ago, once we had the good senator giving a talk here at the university, and during that talk he said, you know, some people even said that I should have stuck to the race when I ran for president. I think he would have made a great president, and I said that one time when I introduced him. He came to the microphone and said, you know, I would have been a good president. And Senator, you would have been. Thank you, Betty and Dale. Thank you to the Bumpers for your lifelong service to the people of Arkansas, to the people of America, and the world. I now invite Dean Veda to introduce this year's distinguished speaker.
Thank you, Chancellor Gearhart, for your inspiring words in honor of Senator Dale and Mrs. Betty Bumpers. And thank you, Dean Leeds, you personally, and to the faculty and staff of the law school for partnering with our college and enabling today's event. We really appreciate all of your efforts to support us. I'd also like to add my thanks and congratulations to Senator Dale Bumpers. You and your career achievements are what embody the mission of the College of Agricultural, Food, and Life Sciences. Throughout your careers, you sought to propel the Arkansas food and agricultural industries to the international prominence that they enjoy today. You advanced environmental stewardship and conservation of natural resources, and you were at the forefront of health issues, development, and quality of life for our nation's children. I thank you for that, and this is what we in the Bumpers College seek to achieve with our academic programs. Thank you for your inspiration. We are honored today to have as our 2013 Dale and Betty Bumpers Distinguished Lecturer, the Honorable U.S. Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack. It is through experiences beyond the classroom, such as we have today, that we seek to challenge our students and nurture our students to become the leaders of tomorrow, to become the first choice candidates for professional careers, setting the national standards on what it means to advance food, family, and the environment. We are pleased and grateful to our sponsors, the Tyson family and the Tyson Foods Foundation, who provided the generous lead gift to establish the endowment to enable today's program. Our format today will be that of a town hall meeting. It'll be opened by Secretary Vilsack and then followed by robust questioning from our students. Under Secretary Vilsack's leadership, there have been some really impressive increases. U.S. exports of food and agricultural products is now at an all-time high. Farm income is at a record high. The number of acres enrolled in conservation programs has increased dramatically, as has the number of farmers markets and local food hubs. Secretary Vilsack is a champion of rural communities and has steadfastly sought to promote economic development here in the U.S. and abroad. Students, faculty, and distinguished guests, please welcome the Honorable Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack.
Thank you, folks. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. This is an intimidating audience. First of all, you tell me at lunch that I'm the second speaker in this lecture series and that the first one was former President Bill Clinton. Don't set the bar too high. Then you tell me this lecture series is named after the Bumpers. You know, I want to tell the Senator and Mrs. Bumpers, when I was a country seat lawyer in Mount Pleasant, Iowa, a town of 8,000, and I started to be involved in politics in the mid-'80s, there's someone I wanted to emulate, somebody that I felt his career sort of matched what I hoped I could do just a little bit of, and that was Dale Bumpers. Not only was this a man who was a great lawyer and appreciated the practice of law for what it is, which is a helping hand to folks in need, but he became an extraordinarily successful and innovative governor, and then had an incredible career, which has been outlined today by the Chancellor as a United States Senator. You know, he's everything you'd want in a public servant. And Senator, I hope at the end of my career, when it ends, that I can have achieved half of what you were able to achieve and what you continue to achieve. And I am humbled and honored to be here at a lecture series named after you. And Mrs. Bumpers, I want to thank you in a different capacity. Not as a former governor, not as the current Secretary of Agriculture, but as a grandfather. I didn't know enough to thank you as a father of my two sons, that when they went to school, they were immunized. But I now know enough as my grandkids begin that process. And I know they're going to be healthy and happier because of the immunization programs. And you have set the standard for spouses of governors throughout the United States. And so as a grandfather, thank you on behalf of Jake and Ella Vilsack for what you did for them. I realized I probably should attempt to provide some degree of credentialing to folks from Arkansas, which may be hard to do for a kid from Pittsburgh who now finds himself an Iowan. But I will tell you that I would not have had the fortunate opportunity to serve as a governor of the great state of Iowa were it not for President Clinton and Secretary Clinton. When I ran for governor in 1998, I was 23 points behind for most of the race, and most of the people in the state of Iowa did not think I had much of a chance. And as Senator Bumpers well knows, when you're behind that far, well, maybe you don't know because you were never behind that far. But when you're behind that far, it's hard to get your phone calls returned. Hillary Clinton kept an eye on my race because she had had an opportunity to know my brother-in-law, Tom Bell. They served together as part of the Senate Judiciary and House Judiciary Committee during the Nixon impeachment process. They were young lawyers and they shared office space together, and they became personal friends. And through that personal friendship, then First Lady Clinton and now Secretary Clinton took an interest in my race, came out and did an event for me in Washington, did an event for me in Iowa, and helped through her husband's generosity raise sufficient resources for me to have a come-from-behind victory. I will be forever indebted to the Clintons. They are just extraordinary people, and I count them as friends. In addition to the Clintons, I obviously have been working very closely with senators from this great state. Former Senator Lincoln was the chair of the Ag Committee when I first became secretary and was very helpful in my confirmation process, and we became close as we did the work of the Senate committee. And now Senator Mark Pryor is a good friend, and I tell you, you all can thank Senator Pryor for avoiding a fairly serious problem with food inspection in this country. We were faced as a result of sequester with the unfortunate circumstance of having to close down a lot of our processing facilities because simply we wouldn't have the resources to be able to pay for food inspectors. Senator Pryor and Senator Blunt understood the significance of that, not just to the industry, but to the country, and took steps to avoid that unfortunate circumstance of sequester. And for that, I will always be forever grateful, and I think all of us should be. Your current governor, Governor Beebe, is a good friend and is very much involved in helping our nutrition efforts as we try to expand our summer feeding programs. He's provided great leadership. Now, this next connection I'm a little bit irritated with, Dean, because you took one of my good staff people from USDA and brought her down here. Janie Hipp, where is Janie? She's got to be in the audience here somewhere. There she is. Janie was my senior advisor for tribal relations and did an extraordinary job for us. Such a good job that you all stole her. Not very happy about that. But we're happy that Janie is down here, and we're very, very pleased with how rested she looks. I've never seen Janie look that rested before. We worked her pretty hard. Walmart's got a special connection. When I became the mayor of Mount Pleasant, following a tragedy in our town, Walmart was just opening its first distribution center in the Midwest. A rather large building. If you can imagine a town of 8,000, and someone suggests they're going to build a 1 million square foot space of warehousing, and you go, that's not going to work very well. But we're happy to have them. That facility is now expanded. Over 1,000 people are employed there, and it has been the lifeblood of my small community where our children were raised. So had an extraordinary opportunity to meet with Sam Walton. He came to Mount Pleasant on a couple of occasions, and he was a man of great vision. And he understood and appreciated the opportunities that Walmart creates, not just in discount and not just in supplies, but now in nutrition, some of the great work that they're doing in expanding nutrition opportunities. I intersect with them now in my current capacity. And then my last experience, I was sharing this with Greg Hale, who's a good friend from Arkansas. One of the last times I came to Arkansas was to run the Little Rock Marathon. Governor Huckabee was losing all that weight, and we were at the National Governors Association. As the senator well knows, you become friends with people, and he said, I'm going to run the marathon. I said, well, I'll run it with you. One of the dumber things I've said in my life. He didn't believe me. I called him up the week before the marathon. I said, what's the weather going to be like down there? It's March. I'm in Iowa, and remember, March, Iowa. He says, oh, it's going to be cold. So I bring my Gore-Tex, I bring my mittens, I bring my hat. Apparently 70 degrees is cold in March in Little Rock. I still have cramps from that experience, but I've got that big, huge medal, and I look at it every day proudly. There's nothing little about the Little Rock. I will just tell you that hill that you have to climb is about 6 miles. It's hard. So hopefully I've established my credentials to speak with you today. Because if I had to base it on my early life, you would probably suggest that you need another guest lecturer today on issues involving agriculture. I started life in a Catholic orphanage in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. As I told students earlier today, if my parents were alive today and they knew I was speaking to you as the Secretary of Agriculture for the United States of America, they would think that our country had gone to hell and back. They would have some serious, serious concerns about the country, because there was nothing about my background that suggested that I would be in this position. But I was fortunate to go to a small town. I was fortunate to practice law. And during the 1980s, when agriculture was having a difficult time, I represented farmers. I represented them because they were being foreclosed on, they were stressed, and they cared deeply. Not just because it was a livelihood for their family, but because it defined who they were. It was their very essence that they were fighting for. And I realized then that I had a responsibility that should I ever have an opportunity to be in public life, that I should do everything I possibly could to ensure that farmers, these good, hard-working, God-fearing folks, would have an opportunity to keep the farm, to expand the operation, to transfer it to the next generation, and to continue to do great things for our country. And what I have found during the last 25 years of my public life is that we in America do not value agriculture or rural America as much as we should. It is an undervalued, underappreciated aspect of our country. Let me just give you 4 specific benefits that we get in this country because of our great farmers and ranchers. And I tried very hard to convince people of this in the media. As the senator knows, and I shared this idea earlier today as well, we have this thing called the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I bet you went to that, Senator. That's one of those dinners, folks, where people from Washington get dressed up. They bring celebrities from all over the country. 2/3 of the people at that dinner do not want to be there, but they feel that they have to be there to be seen. So I'm there, finding myself there, and I realized I was going to be sitting with the Time magazine people. So I thought, well, this is a great opportunity for me to talk about agriculture, what American farmers and ranchers do. And so I passionately spent the hour and a half that I had with these folks trying to convince them that the Time Person of the Year should be the American farmer. Well, I can't complain too much because they chose President Obama. So I have to be careful about this. But I passionately explained to them what I'm going to explain to you. That first and foremost, we are a strong, secure nation with an expanding middle class in large part because of American agriculture. We are a food secure nation. That means that we have the capacity, the capability to produce everything we need to feed ourselves. We don't have to depend on a single foreign country to basically feed our people. Now, don't take that for granted, because there are a lot of countries that can't say that. We constantly hear about China's control of our economy and how we borrow money from them and how powerful they are. 1/4 of all the soybeans raised in Arkansas do not stay in the United States, they go to China, because that is a country that is not food secure. They do not have the capacity and the capability to feed their own people. They are dependent on someone else for food. We're a food secure nation, and we're stronger for it. Not only that, But because of the way in which we produce food and process it and package it and retail it, when people in the United States walk out of a grocery store or walk out of Walmart, they have more money in their pocket from their paycheck than virtually anyone else in the world, because we spend so little of our paycheck for food. Varying studies, somewhere as low as 6 cents of every dollar we earn goes to food. It could be as high as 15 cents, but whether it's 6 cents or 15 cents, it's 10, 15, 20 cents lower than anywhere else in the world. And so I asked my urban and suburban friends, what do you do with that extra 15 or 20 cents for every dollar that you earn? Is your house a little bigger? Is your car a little nicer? Is your vacation spot a little fancier? Are you able to afford more for your college fund for your child? Are you able to retire earlier or with a bigger nest egg? Because you have been given this extraordinary flexibility with your paycheck. But it's not even food security or the economic security that provides the creation of the ability to have us consume other products because we have the resources to do so. It's also about energy. An ever-increasing amount of our energy is coming from rural areas and from farms and ranches. Just think about it. Whether it's oil or natural gas, whether it's wind or solar, whether it's geothermal or hydro, those all basically come from rural areas. And over the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen a declining dependence on foreign sources of energy. When I became secretary, we were importing 62% of our oil. The President had as a goal for us to reduce our dependence on foreign oil. We're now below 45%, and it is likely that in our second term, we could get to as low as 20%. That makes us a stronger and more energy secure nation, brought to you by American farmers, ranchers, and those who live, work, and raise their families in rural areas. And it's not even that. It's that even though the population of rural America is declining, and even though it's a small percentage and the smallest percentage of our overall population in the history of our country, it represents 16% of America. But nearly 40% of those who serve us in the military come from rural America. Those small towns, those ranches, those farms. Why is that so? It is not what some people think that that's where the opportunity is. It's that kids grow up surrounded by a value system. That value system is rooted in agriculture, the notion that you can't keep taking from the land. Every farmer in this audience, every farmer in this state, every farmer and rancher in this country knows that. You've got to give something back. You have to invest back in the land for it to continue to give to you. And if you do it right, it's unlimited in its bounty. A country is no less. And these kids grow up with the understanding if something's important, if something is giving you something that is precious, liberty and freedom, you've got to give something back. So they volunteer. They go off to war. They defend our country. So whether it's food security, economic security, energy security, or national security, it is rooted in this place called rural America. And at the center of it is agriculture. Now, I want to share with you today 3 serious threats to that way of life. There's a short-term threat, there's a medium-term threat, and there's a long-term threat. But I think there are answers and solutions to all 3. First, the short-term threat. We simply don't have enough people to do the work that needs to be done in our farm fields, on our ranches, in our processing facilities. We're relying on immigrant labor. Let's be honest about it. And a significant percentage of that immigrant labor is here in an undocumented way for far too long. We've had a broken immigration system for years. And it now threatens the survival of agriculture because we simply don't have enough people to harvest. We don't have enough people to pick the fruit and the vegetables that are being grown. And literally today we have food rotting because we simply don't have the workforce. We need comprehensive immigration reform. That comprehensive immigration reform has got to include a section specifically designed to address the issue of agriculture, providing a pathway to citizenship for those who have been here and worked here and have struggled here for long periods of time, and complement that with a guest worker system that ensures that we have adequate work supply and workforce for all of the important work that agriculture does. That solution is within our grasp. If we fail to seize it this year, The risk to our country is that we'll begin to see agribusiness make decisions to move operations elsewhere. And we will lose some of that security I talked about. That's the short-term challenge. The medium-term challenge is the young people who are here. Far too many young people have decided that there are better opportunities elsewhere than on the farm, the ranch, or in rural areas. We have a migration out of rural areas. We have an aging farm population. The reality is that the average age of a farmer looks a whole lot more like me than it does like the folks in the front row here. I'm 62 years of age. I suspect the average age of a farmer in America today is 60. I know for a fact that there are more farmers over the age of 65 than there are farmers under the age of 35. And Chancellor, I wasn't real good in math, but I honestly know that that trend line is not what you need to sustain great American agriculture. We've got to be able to make the case to young people that there's opportunity here. Now, the vehicle for doing that is a 5-year farm bill, an opportunity for us to address the food, farm, and jobs issues that are important to rural America, to set up a beginning farmer program that provides the technical assistance and the credit that young people need to get into business. And we've started that process with a new microloan program designed to even help the smallest operator get into the farming business as a way of encouraging more folks to get in. We need to have a strong safety net. Crop insurance is key, but crop insurance needs to be expanded, and it needs to be a fair balance between the taxpayers, the insurance companies, and the farmers to make it work. And we need to expand opportunity. We need to expand markets, and a farm bill can do that. It can first and foremost recognize the important role of exports. Dean, I appreciate you mentioning the exports. We've seen a dramatic increase in American export of agricultural products. We have a trade surplus in agriculture. We have had the largest trade surplus in the history of the country in agriculture. We have had 3 of the best years on record, and for the 4-year period of the president's first term, the best 4-year period ever in the history of American agriculture in terms of exports. Every $1 billion of exports also supports 6,800 jobs. So we're nearly supporting 1 million jobs in addition to providing income opportunities, which helps to explain why we have record farm income. That has got to continue. To do that, you need a farm bill that promotes trade, that allows us to have the tools to encourage trade shows and reverse trade shows and opportunities for us to help small and medium-sized businesses do the job of promoting American agriculture overseas. There are enormous opportunities with free trade agreements that have recently been enacted, with the conversation and discussion of the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the EU Free Trade Agreement. There is unlimited opportunity for folks in production agriculture. But we need a farm bill to provide that certainty and those vehicles and resources to allow young people to get involved. We also need to expand conservation opportunities. And it's not just simply conservation for conservation's sake. As important as it is, I'm proud we have a record number of acres now enrolled in conservation at this USDA and under this president. But we need to do a better job of connecting that conservation to outdoor recreation. You see, outdoor recreation is a $656 billion industry annually. Let me repeat that. It's $656 billion annual industry. We spend a lot of money to hunt, to fish, and to hike, and to bike. And conservation creates the landscapes and the wildlife that allows us to do more of that. So we need a farm bill that creates a commitment to conservation, that creates fewer programs so it's not so doggone complex, and allows us the flexibility to tailor conservation to the unique aspects of landscape in every part of the country. I come down here yesterday, I had a roundtable meeting with farmers. The big message they conveyed to me is Arkansas agriculture is different than it is in a lot of other places. It's more diverse. It's got more challenges. We raise catfish, we raise rice, we raise soybeans, we raise fruits and vegetables, we raise cotton, we raise it all here. And your programs have to take that into consideration. I get that. Conservation has to be streamlined. And it has to be structured in such a way that we create some degree of certainty for those who invest in conservation, that we don't change the rules on them so that they have to invest and reinvest and reinvest. So we're working with the Department of Interior, our sister agency, and the Endangered Species Act to create enough security and certainty that if you invest in conservation, the government's not going to come in and have the Endangered Species Act require you to do more. We're providing 30 years of regulatory certainty under a new program that we've announced. We need to do more of that, and we need to establish the ability to measure and verify and quantify the results of conservation so those can be traded in ecosystem markets to create additional resources to invest in conservation. Unlimited opportunity here. We need to expand local and regional food systems. I'm proud of the fact that we now have 7,800 farmers markets in this country, that we've seen a 68% increase in farmers markets in the last 4 years. I'm proud of the fact that we've invested in food hubs. That's the ability to aggregate smaller producers into one seamless process so that you can sell to institutional purchasers like a school or a university. But we need to do more of that because folks want to know where their food comes from. They want to know who their farmer is, and that's a good thing because it connects people. Small statistic, important statistic. Take the most liberal definition of farming. Anybody who sells more than $1,000 worth of stuff is a farmer in this country under USDA guidelines. That's 2.3 million people. That's less than 1% of the total population. Take the people that you would consider actually family farmers, not the folks who have residential farms or hobby farms, the people who farm for a living. It's about 1 million people. Take from that the folks who produce 85% of our food. It's really 200,000 to 300,000 operations. It's less than 1/10 of 1%. Actually, 32,000 farms in this country produce 50% of what we consume. Less than 1/10 of 1/10 of 1%. So we have got, if we want a farm bill, if we want political relevance, we have got to talk to the other 99.9%. And you do that in part through local and regional food systems. You connect people. And it provides great entrepreneurial opportunities. So we need to do more of that, but we can't unless we have a farm bill that supports specialty crops, that supports organic research, that allows us to continue to have the programs that support farmers markets and food hubs and rural development. And finally, this enormous opportunity of a bio-based economy, the ability to take everything we grow, everything we raise, every aspect of it, and convert it into something far more valuable. Hog waste being used in Ohio to produce asphalt. Wisconsin taking corn cobs and producing plastic bottles for Coca-Cola. Virginia taking plant material and producing auto bodies. Taking wood products in the Midwest and converting it into armor that's lighter and stronger than Kevlar through nanotechnology. This is the future of a country that recreates an economy that's bio-based, reducing its over-reliance on fossil fuels, cleaner environmentally, and creates a whole new opportunity for manufacturing, most of which will have to be done in rural areas because the bulk of biomass can't be transported thousands of miles to be processed. That's what a farm bill can do. It can address these young people and say there's enormous opportunity, there's exciting, inspiring opportunity. But we need a 5-year farm bill to do that. Last issue, the long-term threat, climate. You know, the year before last, I dealt with floods. Last year, I dealt with a drought. Now I'm dealing with both drought and floods. Dealing with horrific hurricanes and storms that have affected the Northeast in places they never thought farms would ever be impacted by a storm. And we know that tornadoes have been more ferocious in the last couple of years. It's getting warmer and the weather is getting more intense. We just recently concluded an assessment, and if we don't develop mitigation and adaptation strategies, it is not unlikely that what we grow and what we raise today in certain parts of the country will simply not be allowed to do that because Mother Nature won't let us do it 30, 40, 50 years from now. So instead of focusing just on 1 year, which a budget forces you to do, or 5 years, which a farm bill forces you to do, we also need to be thinking 40 and 50 years out. We need to be developing right now the research that allows us to identify the strategies where we can produce more with less, where we have new water management strategies that recognizes we're going to be in shortages in some parts of the country in terms of critical water resources. We need to develop the seed technology that allows us to grow food even when there's hardly a drop of rain. We need to create ways in which we can mitigate the consequences of pests and invasive diseases and so forth that are a result of a warming climate. We need to do this research now, which is why we have to have a commitment to climate change and adaptation and mitigation strategy. We need more research. We need to develop multi-cropping strategies. We need to reduce the barriers to multi-cropping. We need to understand how we can create markets for this new multi-cropping. We need to use our land more efficiently and more effectively. So short-term, medium-term, long-term threats. All of this can be resolved. All of it can be done with leadership. And let me leave you with this so that we can take time for questions. This requires agriculture and rural America to do a couple of things that they may not have been doing as well in the past. First, we have to have a proactive message about all this. I can't tell you how many farmers I talk to. Every time I talk to them, here's what I hear. Too much regulation. Taxes are too high. It's hard work. Concerned about drought. They explain all the challenges, and I get that. But if that's the message that you're conveying to young people, and you compare that and contrast that to what's going on in the cities and suburbs about how exciting the technology world could be and how you could become the next Bill Gates, and all of a sudden it's like, I'm out of here. We have to have a proactive message to the young people here. Here's what you can do in agriculture. You can redefine the American economy. You can solve global warming and climate change. You can create a new opportunity to rebuild the value system of this country by making sure that rural communities continue to be populated, and you can be a leader in a community at a very, very, very early age. That, to me, is a much more proactive message than maybe we are overregulated and maybe we are overtaxed, but that's not a way to sell what we do. We need to strategically align ourselves because we are, yes, less than 1% of the population, but we got to convince the other 99% to assist us. That's why nutrition programs are important. They're part of the safety net for farmers. Sometimes farmers fail to realize that. If you can buy more at the grocery store, you're going to buy more. And if you buy more, it means it has to be shipped, processed, packaged, shelved, and produced. All of those are jobs. All of those are jobs. All of those allow us to have strategic alliances that support those who produce to begin with. So it's important for us to be strategically aligned, to use our nutrition friends as allies in an effort to get a 5-year bill through the process. There are some who want to split it. There are some who are saying, yeah, but they get too much money. We need to somehow take more of that money and put it into farm programs. In this environment, trust me, any dollar that's taken away from the agricultural budget is not going to go to some other aspect of the agricultural budget. It's going to go to some other department, or it's going to go to deficit reduction. Folks, we're in a fight for our life here. I'm now dealing with a budget that's below where it was in 2009. So we need to be strategically aligned. We need to redefine what rural is. Country's changing. If we redefine rural, if we provide some consistency in the rural definition, we might be able to align ourselves more carefully. We have 11 different definitions of rural in the Code of the United States today. 11. We only need one. Make it a lot simpler. Bring in a lot more folks and make them understand that they too have rural roots. And we need to embrace diversity. We can't be afraid of it. We need to embrace it. That's why this immigration issue is so important, because it allows us to continue to relive the American experience where people come in, work jobs that are hard, sacrifice, and ultimately have the next generation have a better life than theirs. The key to all this is the value system I said before. As a former governor, you have a chance to see folks in the National Guard, and I will tell you that I have just been overly impressed with those folks. They are committed to this country. They're willing to put their life on the line for this country. They come from these small towns because that's where they were raised. They have that value system that encourages them to provide and to sacrifice. That's why this is important. It's a continuation of the American experience. It's a continuation of the value system that's made this country the greatest country on earth. And it starts with agriculture. It's time that we recognize this. It's time that we do a better job of communicating it. And it's time that America begins to appreciate and value what American agriculture, farmers, ranchers, and those who live, work, and raise their families in rural communities have done, not just for rural America, but for all of America. Thank you very much.
Now we're going to open up the question and answer session. And Secretary, I just want to thank you on behalf of the Bumpers College, the School of Law, and the University of Arkansas for honoring us with your time and insight today. My name is Maggie Jo Pruitt. I'm an agricultural communications major with an agribusiness minor. And I'm from Bergman, Arkansas. And this year I've served as the director of lectures for the Bumpers College Student Honors Board. And this crowd is made up of a lot of honor students today. We're an organization that serves to unite students with opportunities like this for professional and personal growth. We have two microphone ladies today, Victoria and Emily, if you can go ahead and get ready. And I will explain the process for the question and answer time. You can ask any question, the secretary will answer any question. We ask that it is left, maybe, it is left to issues relating to agricultural policy due to the nature of today. Whenever you ask a question, please raise your hand high so we can see you and call on you, and you will be given a microphone. And stand, give your name, hometown, and your major before you ask your question. We will also have social media streaming in for questions at some point. If you can tweet your questions, the secretary would answer one from Twitter as well, and I will decide that on random. Be sure you include bumpers13, the hashtag bumpers13 with your tweet. And
I got to tell you, I do object to the Twitter thing. I don't know how can you answer a question in 140 characters? That's a challenge.
you can answer it in person. They just have to ask it 140 characters. And so Emily is going to start out the question session by asking hers, and then Victoria, and then we will open the floor to students. Emily, if you'll introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Emily Lehman. I am a senior poultry science major from Lima, Ohio. And my question for you, Secretary Vilsack, is where do you see my generation of college graduates fitting into shaping agricultural policies in Washington, D.C., Little Rock, and other capitals around the nation?
Well, first of all, I assume that you can have my job when I'm finished with it if you want it. No, seriously, I think your generation has the ability to redefine, as I said earlier in my speech, what it means to be rural and to do a better job than my generation has done in educating people about the importance of agriculture so that we continue to invest in things like research that are critical for us to meet the challenges that I've laid out. I do believe that we are aggressively trying to promote young people's involvement at USDA through a thing we call cultural transformation, where we're trying to make sure that USDA is representative of the country that we work for. And we have internships in which we try to bring young people in and have them experience in real life and significant responsibilities at USDA so that they can understand what career opportunities there are. In my department, you can, if you're interested in forestry, we can find a place for you. If you're interested in food science and the science of food safety, we can find a place for you. If you're interested in trade and promotion, we can find a place for you. If you're interested in communications, we can find a place for you. If you have a burning desire to be in economic development and to promote rural economic opportunity, we have a place for you. If you want to be in the credit world, if you want to understand the crop insurance programs because that's where your passion is, we can find a place for you. So I would say take advantage of those internship opportunities. And we have a process by which you go through USA Jobs, and we will try to work with folks. And then I think it's about looking at the opportunities that in smaller communities that you can utilize to create a new entrepreneurial opportunity, to get in the farming business, to create economic opportunity through a bio-based. I mean, there are just unlimited opportunities here, but you got to take a chance. You got to take a chance on rural America and come back to that small town or a small town similar to the one you grew up in and basically provide your talent. It isn't just always about moving to the city. You can be, at a very early age, as I said, I was 36 when I was elected mayor. By the time I was 41, I was a state senator. By the time I was 47, 48, I was a governor, and now I'm a Secretary of Agriculture. I mean, and there's nothing special about me. I just had a terrific opportunity. So there's just unlimited, and I think that's the challenge, is for you to understand the unlimited nature of the opportunity. It's not restricted. I think sometimes we have a tendency to tell you there's a very narrow lane in rural areas. It's not. It's very wide.
Hi, Secretary Vilsack. My name is Victoria Malik, and I'm a freshman agriculture business student from Magnolia, Arkansas. You touched earlier a little bit about agricultural education. My question for you is, what is the USDA's current relationship with the Department of Education in regards to agricultural education in middle and high school programs, and where do you see that relationship moving in the future?
You're a freshman?
Yes.
Well, it gets more intimidating every day. So one of the things I realized that during tough budget times, one of the first things that happens at the local school district, and I recognize this as a governor, is that they begin looking for ways in which they can economize. And unfortunately and tragically, one place where they seek to economize is by limiting or eliminating the ag programs or the vocational programs. Big mistake, huge mistake, because of what's happening. I mean, there's just genuine interest in food science, in local and regional food systems, in farmers market, just tremendous energy there, all right? So when I got this job, I decided I needed to do something about that, and realizing that most of the education programs are obviously in the Department of Education, I literally physically went over to Arnie Duncan's office. And I said, Arnie, you come from Chicago. God bless you for that. Your department's got to understand the importance of rural schools. You got to understand that these kids in rural schools deserve every bit of an opportunity as the kids in cities do. And you need to understand that you cannot eliminate, even in cities, because we now have urban farming. I was in a facility in San Diego the other day. It's totally hydroponic, 2.5 acres under roof, produces vegetables, kale and spinach and lettuce for Whole Foods. It's a family-owned business. It's farming. It's a different kind of farming. You could put that greenhouse anywhere in the country. Anywhere in the country. So don't shut off kids who might be interested in doing that by not having them have access to those education programs. So we signed a memorandum of understanding. And it's a document that basically commits the Department of Education and our department to work more closely together with 4-H and FFA to make sure that we are promoting more effectively ag education in the classroom, to make sure that school boards, superintendents understand the significance and importance of these programs and maintain them, and not see them as a potential budget-cutting strategy. And I think we're seeing much more advocacy for those programs as a result. But again, it depends on repopulating rural areas, on creating economic opportunities so that people, and it depends on us doing a better job of communicating to the other 99% that just simply don't yet have a full appreciation for what goes on in agriculture and don't understand the sophistication and the challenging nature of that job. I said this earlier today, you could be an absolutely perfect farmer, you can do everything perfectly right, and you can be a total failure when Mother Nature decides you're not gonna have any rain, or she decides you're gonna have too much water. So it's a tough business. And so we need to make sure that kids understand that, but also that they understand the extraordinary opportunities. Look, gang, we got 3 billion more people who are going to grace this earth during your lifetime. Who's going to feed them? Where's the food going to come from? And if you think we got trouble now, from a national security perspective, wait till people start fussing and fighting over food and water. You ain't seen nothing yet. But you all have the ability to solve that problem. You can create the science that allows us to produce something from nothing. And you can take that opportunity and you can transfer it to other countries and create a relationship between that country and our country that makes us more secure and them better off. You can help create middle classes in those countries, which in turn, a middle class is not as likely to be thinking about revolution and turning things upside down. And that middle class will need value-added agricultural production, plays to our strength, and other consumer goods, which also plays to our strength. So tremendous opportunity in that area. Who's next?
Hello, Senator. Thank you for coming here today.
No, I'm not a senator. Listen. Sorry about that, Senator.
Already
No.
embarrassed. Thank you, Secretary Vilsack, for coming today. My name's Nathan Tompkins. I'm from Oklahoma City and a horticulture, landscape, and turf science major. With social media becoming so popular, there are a lot of misconceptions being thrown around in regards to food production and water usage and pesticide usage. So what sort of education programs can we use to educate the general public?
Well, first of all, that's a great question, and it's an important one. And my first bit of advice is it's very similar to politics. Senator Bumpers can tell you this, I can tell you it. If you get hit with a negative ad in politics and you don't respond right away, it can stick whether it's true or not. So it's going to be important for all of us in agriculture, all of us in food processing and food production to understand you cannot let something stick for a short period of time and hope it goes away because it doesn't match the truth or it seems ridiculous. If you have any doubts about that, I can show you a company in northwest Iowa and southeast South Dakota that was impacted by social media in a very negative way, and they now know they should have reacted more quickly. Lean, finely textured beef issues. So, number one, respond quickly and use the same process. I mean, you know, the social media is not limited to folks who want to raise questions or concerns about agriculture. It should be utilized fully and completely by those who advocate for agriculture. And your generation is in a great position to create opportunities with blogs, with searching the net and being in a position to respond rapidly to issues and to make sure that people are well educated. So using the social media, we've begun to use that at USDA. We've tried to modernize our approach to education. One of our problems at USDA is our portfolio is so broad that it's hard for us, you know, I can talk about virtually everything that's going on in this country because we're doing everything, and sometimes that dilutes the message a little bit, which is why I thought it was really important and why I encouraged agriculture to have a single message. There's a lot of fussing and fighting going on within agriculture about types of production processes. As soon as you have that, you dilute the message. So the Farmer and Rancher Alliance that was formulated by a number of the commodity groups and a number of the livestock groups, I think is an important step forward because it's going to provide a single message. It's going to promote agriculture in a positive way. I'm a Steeler fan, so it was really hard for me to watch the Super Bowl, but I sort of watched it for the ads. There's only one ad I remember from the Super Bowl, and that was a great ad about farmers, and I didn't have any idea it was a truck ad until the end. And I suspect none of us who watched that ad did. But I tell you, it was a powerful ad. It was a very powerful ad. That is the kind of thing that we need to do more of. And we also need to make sure that, as I said, we need to strategically align with folks. Instead of picking fights with folks, like our nutrition friends, we ought to be figuring out how we get along with them so they can reinforce our message and we can reinforce theirs.
Next question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Secretary Vilsack. My name is Lou Hirsch. I'm a PhD candidate in the Department of Plant Pathology, and I was born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona. Under your leadership, the USDA has seen great increases in nutrition, food inspection, but that's come at the expense or the de-emphasis on programs for plant health and some aspects of plant production, both in the competitive grant programs for academics and also positions in research like at USDA ARS. Do you have any words of encouragement for people like me who will be wrapping up my graduate program here and who have fulfilled the mission statement of the Morrell grant system as best as we can, but face a increasingly difficult job market to return the investment of the American taxpayer to agriculture?
Sure. You and I can have a brief discussion about how much of an impact the competitive program has had. I can argue that the competitive program has allowed us to leverage dollars more effectively in a time when we're dealing with fewer dollars. But I would say this. First of all, you're going to see a greater concerted effort on research generally. The last 2 years, we've been trying to build the case to the President and to Congress about the importance of continued investment in research. That case was not being effectively made for an extended period of time, and we had flatlined our research budget. And the result is that there is a corresponding potential reduction in the productivity of American agriculture. There's a good correlation between research and productivity. So we wanted to make the case that, hey, you got to pay attention to this just in the same way you've paid attention to health care and health research. And the President's budget involves a significantly additional amount of funding given the fiscal circumstances we find ourselves in. And I think we're going to get a receptive audience from Congress. So I think you're going to see more money in the research area. We are consolidating some of our internal research operations, our ARS research operations, because we've done a thorough and appropriate review of those facilities to determine where the high-profile research is taking place, where the accommodations and lab is modern enough to be able to do that research, and where we may have situations where the research is not as significant or the facilities are in such bad shape that they aren't salvageable. That requires us to make some tough calls because, again, we have limited resources. This is a different world we live in. This is not a situation where the government's going to continue to increase and spend more money than it has. We're going in a different direction. And the direction now is every penny counts. So we have put together a capital improvement program where we're reducing some of our facilities. We hope to be able to build additional facilities. And we hope to focus them on a variety of issues. The mission area of USDA has many, many responsibilities. One responsibility is clearly ag productivity and protection, animal productivity and protection, and we do provide resources in our competitive grant program, and a substantial amount of our ARS operations are in those areas. But we also have a responsibility with the obesity epidemic that we're faced with in this country, where a third of our youngsters are at risk of being obese or in fact obese. If they go into adulthood in that shape, they're going to take chronic diseases with them into adulthood. Healthcare costs are going to increase dramatically, and that's going to sap any resource that might be available for other responsibilities of government. So in the long term, it's best for us to get our handle on that. We need to know what works and what doesn't work in the obesity area. We need to know, and we had a wonderful discussion at breakfast this morning about what triggers obesity. I learned today you can have two people with the same doggone genes, live in the same place, eat the same food, exercise the same way, but because of one aspect of their makeup, they may absorb protein differently, or they may have a different metabolism that's triggered by different things and different chemicals. It's an amazing science. We need to know more about that so we can control obesity. We need to know more about forest health. Why? Because forests are extraordinary sequesters of carbon, and if we want to mitigate and adapt to climate change, we have to know a little bit more about what works in terms of forest resilience and forest restoration. Same thing with soil. We need to do some additional research on the carbon sequestration and carbon capacity of the current soil so we can begin creating those ecosystem markets that will allow greater investment in conservation. So it's a broad research agenda that we face. So there are a multitude of opportunities in the space that you're talking about, and if we have a bio-based economy where we're taking plant material, crop residue, waste product, and we're converting it into a wide variety of products, the potential for what you do is unlimited. And if we're confronted with a situation where we have fewer natural resources in terms of water or a changing climate, you're going to have to tell us how we adapt and mitigate to that. So I'd say in the future there's going to be tremendous opportunity in your space. And we're trying to prepare ourselves with modern facilities, targeting the resources, leveraging dollars, and working with the private sector effectively to create the answers to all of these problems that we face.
Secretary, now we have a question from the Harbor High School AP Environmental Science class. Although the students aren't here, they will watch your answer later as they watch the video of the lecture. Their question is, what is the government's plan for protecting small rural economies from having to compete with large corporate farms that are benefiting from ethanol subsidies?
Well, let's set the record straight about all this. There are different ways in which government helps different sized operations. There is a slight misconception about the impact of ethanol production. It's not highly subsidized as much as people think it is because the tax credits that used to subsidize the industry have gone. They've expired and they were not renewed. There is a renewable fuel standard that's important to the industry, but this industry also provides extraordinary benefits. Number one, about 400,000 people are directly or indirectly employed because of that industry, so it's a job creator. Number two, all of us who fill our car up with gas, we probably are paying somewhere between 25 cents to $1 less a gallon than we would otherwise be paying because we have a robust renewable fuel industry. Number three, it's one of the reasons why we reduced our reliance on foreign oil, which is good for our energy and national security. And number 4, it has helped to stabilize for many, many producers in this country pricing that allows them to continue to stay in business. Now, smaller producers may say, well, we don't get the kind of help that the big guys get. We don't get the direct payments, or we don't have crop insurance. Part of that's true, and that's why we're trying to expand crop insurance for specialty crops, and we're trying to figure out ways in which we can help organic production. We're continuing to expand risk management tools for them. We also have the specialty crop block grant. We have the farmers market promotion programs. But way in which we help those smaller specialty crop producers is through our purchasing power as a federal government. We purchase a lot of food for food banks and for school lunch and school breakfast programs. That's one way that we actually help to subsidize those small and medium-sized operations. Secondly, we are changing the nature of what's being served at our school lunch and school breakfast programs to deal with the obesity and hunger issues we face in this country. And there's going to be more opportunity for fruit and vegetable, low-fat dairy and whole grains to be integrated in those school meals. So there are a lot of different ways, and then we have the research budgets, a lot of which goes into helping those niche market or specialty crop areas. So there are a lot of different ways in which government can provide help and assistance. It's not just a simple tax credit and say, hey, I don't get that, therefore I'm not subsidized. Well, the government's not purchasing ethanol, but they are purchasing fruits and vegetables for food banks because they help to stabilize the market that way, and that's hundreds of millions of dollars of help that sometimes people don't recognize. That's how I would respond to that question. And I think we have to, I think at USDA and in the renewable fuel area, we have to move beyond the over-reliance on corn-based ethanol, and I think we're going to begin to do that, to advanced biofuels that use woody biomass, that use plant material, that use municipal waste. There's a facility in New Mexico, Sapphire Energy, that just recently paid off a rural development loan at USDA early, which is unusual. They're going to have a 30,000-acre algae farm in the middle of a desert, I think, in New Mexico. And that algae is going to be able to produce the equivalent, I think, of 10,000 barrels of oil a day. We're working with the Navy and the Department of Energy to create a drop-in aviation fuel so that the Navy's fuel supply will be 50% bio-based and domestically produced. Makes us a lot safer from a national security perspective, and I'm told it might even be cheaper than the jet fuel they're buying today. And our commercial aviation industry is really interested in this because they're faced with greenhouse gas emissions in other countries that they won't be able to meet with the current fuel mixture, but will with the biofuel mix. So it's like, again, it's one of these unlimited opportunities. So there are lots of different ways that we help, and I think it's one of those situations where, why you're helping him, but why aren't you helping me? We're fussing with each other. We're talking to each other. Meanwhile, the other 99.9% of the people have no idea where their food comes from. And so they don't think that the farm bill is important. They think the food comes from a grocery store, and what the heck. We have to stop doing this and start having a much broader, in my view, a much broader conversation with the country.
Thank you. I think there's a question here in the middle. Third row.
Thanks for being with us today, Mr. Secretary. My name is Mike Norton. I'm a senior agricultural economics and poultry science, and I'm actually looking at being in D.C. for the next 2 years, hopefully, working. But my question is, we're here in an interesting location here in Northwest Arkansas. You have a lot of local or organic producers with the Fayetteville Farmers Market, but then you've also got George's, Tyson Foods, a very large poultry industry. I'm wondering from you, do you feel that local and organic is a true solution for world hunger, or simply a niche market for wealthy Americans and Europeans that can pay for a pineapple that was grazed or grown in a South Dakota greenhouse? Just interested to get your
He's
thoughts.
a skeptical guy on organic. Anyway, that going? Yeah, the answer to your question is neither. It's neither. It's the fastest growing segment of agriculture. It is encouraging direct-to-consumer sales opportunities, which allows young, smaller producers to get in business and have a market that helps bring entrepreneurial activity and innovation into a community and helps to repopulate rural areas. That's pretty significant. It is high value added. no doubt about that. And if folks can afford it and want to buy it, why wouldn't we be for that? It's not either or. Greg Page, who's the CEO of Cargill, gave a wonderful speech not long ago at a U.S. Chamber of Commerce event, which I helped to stimulate. I asked the Chamber to understand what agriculture was doing as part of this opportunity to get the message out broader. And he said, we're in this country, we have the tyranny of or. And what he meant by that was that we're constantly putting situations where it's either this or that. It's either organic or it's GMO. But what we really look for is the and. It's all hands on deck here for meeting the short, medium, and long-term threats. It's all hands on deck to be able to produce enough food to meet a hungry world. From that perspective, I think science is important, and I think GMOs are important, and I think we have a lot of work to do to break down the barriers and misunderstandings about that. I think you're going to continue to see a lot of that happen. You're going to see those barriers break down as free trade discussions begin earnestly with the EU. That's an issue that's going to have to be discussed and have to be decided. But I don't think it's at the expense of organic, especially since we want to repopulate rural areas. And when I'm telling you 32,000 farms produce 50% of our food, and I'm telling you that the average age of a farmer is 60, in your lifetime, when you're my age, how many farmers are going to be left? Unless we have an entryway for smaller producers. Unless we got an innovative and creative way for young folks who may not be fortunate enough to have been from a farm family to be able to get in the business. Organic, farmers markets, community-supported agriculture, farm-to-school programs, direct-to-consumer sales, multi-billion-dollar industry, a great entry point. So it shouldn't be or, it should be and. And so what we're doing at USDA is we're saying, look, stop fussing with each other. There's room for everybody here. Let's listen to each other. One of the things that the organic folks say, well, but these guys are going to contaminate my crop, and that value added that I have is going to be lost. Okay, let's find out about that. Let's do research about that. Let's figure out what the gene flow is. Let's figure out what the risk is. And you know what, GMO producer? Maybe you got some stewardship responsibilities that you ought to be doing because you're a good neighbor. An organic guy, maybe you need to be thinking about some kind of insurance mechanism that can cover the risk if that terrible thing happens. Just in the same way we cover risks when Mother Nature decides not to give us enough water or too much water. There are ways to be and not to embrace the tyranny of or. And this gets back to this whole notion of talking to the other 99%. If we're fussing about which type of agriculture is better or purer or healthier or holier or whatever, we're not talking to the other 99% about what a great deal they have with American agriculture. We should be appreciating what our farmers and ranchers, regardless of what kind of farming and ranching they're into, are doing. And we ought to be encouraging more of that.
Next question. Emily, I'm on the front row.
My name is Christopher Bierman. I'm a law student here at the law school, and I'm from McKinney, Texas. My question is, in your talk, you alluded to both a sense of overregulation and a need to work on climate change at the same time. Those ideas seem to be in opposition because I would assume that there needs to be regulation in order to encourage efforts to climate change. You're shaking your head, tells me I'm wrong.
Yeah, well.
Then what I would follow that with then is, how do you see those two goals meeting in the middle, coming together, and encouraging both more efficient yet environmentally protective farming measures?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm shaking my head because you're in law school and you want an argument, right? I mean, you want to be able. First of all, this issue of regulations. Part of my challenge with reference to the concern about overregulation is that oftentimes, when I'm talking to folks, what they think is a regulation turns out not to be the regulation. I can't tell you how much time I spent the last 3 years explaining to farmers that EPA was not going to regulate farm dust. The EPA administrator said it, I said it, didn't make any difference. They were convinced, by God, we're going to regulate farm dust. Or that if you kicked over a bucket of milk, it's your milking account, that's going to be regulated. Not so. So part of what we have to do is make sure there's an open line of communication so that folks know exactly what that regulation is and why it's being considered. Sometimes it's because Congress has directed it. Sometimes it's because a court has ordered it, okay? So we've created a structure and a system where EPA and the USDA are constantly communicating, and that we've created a process by which the EPA administrator and the Secretary of Agriculture will meet with commodity groups and livestock groups on a regular basis in Washington, D.C. to have a dialogue. So each knows what the concerns are, we can clarify the record, or we can explain why we're doing something. I think that's helpful. I think that there are market opportunities here on this issue of climate change that we ought to be exploring, and I alluded to it earlier, and let me be more specific about this. If you can actually measure conservation, if you can measure how much carbon is sequestered with a particular production process or a multi-cropping opportunity, right, or proper restoration of forested land, if you can measure that and you can verify it and you can quantify it, there may be a utility out there that has a regulation that requires it to do X, Y, or Z with reference to the environment to avoid and to limit emissions, who might be able to satisfy that regulatory responsibility by investing in your conservation activity on your farm. That creates a private sector investment that's not taking place very much today. But it's conditioned upon our ability to measure, quantify, and verify that what you're doing is actually going to work. Let me give you an example. It's not a climate change example, but it'll tell you that this actually works. I think it's in Oregon, but it's out in the northwestern part of the country. There's this utility company that takes water out of a stream and uses it to produce power, dumps it back in the stream. It's as clean as a whistle when they dump it back in. It's just a little warmer. Normally that wouldn't be a problem, but the salmon go down that stream, see, and they don't like the warm water. So government comes along and says, hey, balance, you got to do something about that water. So normally the industry would say, well, we'll build a cooling tower. It'll cost millions of dollars. We'll cool the water. We'll complain about it. We'll have to maintain it. And then we'll have to build another one when it gets, just not a good solution. Somebody was smart. Someone said, you know what? Wait a second. We can measure water temperature. And there are ways other than a cooling tower to reduce the temperature of water. So, for example, you could just plant shade trees along the riverbank there. That will naturally reduce the temperature. The salmon will be happy. We'll pay the landowner to plant the trees, which now is a non-productive piece of real estate that now becomes an income producer. And we won't have to build a silly cooling tower, and we sure as heck won't have to maintain it. We'll be millions of dollars ahead, and the environment will be better off. That's an environmental market. We can do that in a lot of different places. But the key is being able to measure, verify, and quantify, and make sure that the result is what you need to satisfy. So I don't think it necessarily has to be that we're going to regulate you and tell you what you have to do. I think we need to be creative about saying, well, what's the problem here? What's the creative solution? And that's your job. That's what you all can do. That's what you, Mr. Lawyer, can do. It's what you should do. You should sit down with your client and say, wait a second, before you start telling me to go in and argue about why they shouldn't be regulating this, let's look for the creative solution here. That could be, an opportunity for us to do something differently. And then government's role should be open enough and flexible enough, and this is a problem for us in government, no question about that, is to be able to say, yeah, we can do that. And the reason why government's that way, again, with due respect to the senator, Congress passes laws that's all about process. It's never about a specific result. My view of this is, tell me what it is you want me to do. Tell me the result that you want. If I can stand on my head and get that result, what difference does it make how I get there as long as I get there. And you can measure it, and you can say, yes, you've succeeded, or no, you haven't. We don't do that. We create these processes, these stovepipes, these silos. So then you come to me and say, I got a great idea. And I go, well, it doesn't fit in that silo. It doesn't fit in that silo. I can't do it. You get frustrated and you get upset. If we break down the silos and we create flexibility for me to say, that's a great idea. Let's figure out how to do it. Sometimes we don't have that capacity. And that is a problem with government. And it is a problem that government has got to get fixed pretty soon, or we're going to slow the process down so much that we won't be able to benefit. And what we're doing at USDA through process improvement is we're trying to force people to think differently about exactly how much paperwork do you really need to be filled out? Do you need to fill out the same paperwork for every single loan, regardless of size? You need to think about this stuff.
Secretary, we have time for one more question.
Okay?
My name is Amy Wilcox. I'm a freshman majoring in animal science and ag education. My question is, in a culture where there are so many anti-agricultural protests, how do you respond to that in government, and how do we as college students respond to that respectfully and shine a positive light on agriculture when we're faced with that?
You know, I think you have to engage people in conversation. I gave a speech at the Farm Bureau convention, and I started talking about this strategic alliance business and picking the right fights. And of course, people say, well, I'm not going to sit down with the Humane Society of America. I mean, they hate agriculture. Maybe they do. I don't know, but I tell you, it's this tyranny of war again. And frankly, you know, we get upset with our Congress because it seems like they've got gridlock. They can't decide things because it's either this party or that party. It's either my way or the highway. We don't want them to act that way. Why should we act that way? Now, there may be people that don't want to talk to us. There may be people that just don't want to sit down and have that conversation. But I think that young people are in a unique circumstance and situation. It's very hard for me to turn down somebody who's wearing one of those blue coats. All right? You want to have a conversation with me, I'm happy to talk to you. And I think FFA has an opportunity to reach out to young people who maybe through social media you identify folks that are, you know, anti-agriculture, and you sit down and say, let's talk about this. I'm not going to judge you, you don't judge me. Let's talk about this. And what'll happen is they'll throw something out and you'll go, man, that's not right. That's not what the science says. And you avoid getting into that shouting match. You say, well, let's look at the science. Let's talk about this. And maybe they've got a point. You know, here's an interesting thing that's going on here. Companies are beginning to pay attention to all of this. And right or wrong, they're saying, oh, okay, then if the customer wants this, we're going to give it to the customer. And I said this yesterday at Walmart and Tyson's. You know, the customer's always right, whether they are or not. If they decide they want something produced a certain way, they'll use the market force and power to compel that unless there's a dialogue, unless there's a way of educating people about precisely what happens in agriculture. It is that disconnect. I don't know what farming is like because I live in a city. My image of a farmer is a guy in bib overalls, chomping on a bit of straw. That's not what farming is. Farming is a guy sitting behind a $500,000 piece of equipment using a GPS system and precisely planting his crop and precisely using chemicals and pesticides and using technology to avoid the overuse of those pesticides and chemicals to produce a product that allows you, Mr. Consumer, to have extraordinary diversity at affordable price. And does it even though he can be perfect at it and still fail. That's why he needs a safety net. And you're stronger and secure and you got a middle class and you have all these options because agriculture has progressed the way it's progressed. And if you have any doubt about that, take a look at any developing country in the world. Take a look at where their agriculture is, and that will tell you why they have enormous poverty, why they have hungry people, why they don't have a middle class, why they don't have jobs, because they don't have that agricultural base that supports them. You know, I know this sounds naive. I know it sounds naive, but we've got to get back in this country to talking to one another, to respecting each other, and recognizing and listening. There is common ground here. I put 22 people in a room on this issue of coexistence. Passionate people about organic, passionate people about GMO. When they first started that conversation, my staff would come back and go, they are never going to get to a resolution here. And I would go in and I would say, look, you've got to do this. You've got to figure out where the common ground is. They eventually came to a point where they said, you know what? GMO producers probably have a stewardship responsibility because that's who we are in rural America. We care about our neighbor. We care about our land. And we'll reflect that in finding out what works from a stewardship responsibility, and you know what? We should embrace that. And the seed company should help us. Organic guys go, you know, maybe I have some responsibility here to protect my value, just in the same way you protect your home with insurance or your car with insurance, your life with insurance. Maybe I got a responsibility. But you know what, Mr. Secretary? You don't have a product to sell me. You can talk about me protecting the risk. I can't do that because you don't sell it to folks like me. So you know what? That's a good point. Let's figure this out. They came to a conclusion. They came up with a set of recommendations, and we're following through on those recommendations because they had the courage and the guts to sit down and talk instead of past each other. And I will tell you, as a country, there's a valuable lesson from those 20-some folks. Doesn't mean that you have to check your passions, doesn't mean you have to check your views or your principles. But you do have to work because this country works best not on either extreme, in my view. This country works best when we empower the moderate middle. And that moderate middle says to the extremes, you know what? You guys can fuss and fight all you want, but this country's going to move forward because we're going to make a deal and a decision on comprehensive immigration reform. We're going to get to a 5-year farm program and balanced nutrition and farm programs. We're going to figure out, we can fuss about what causes climate change, but the reality is we better be prepared for it because if we're not, we could lose something very valuable in this country. And we cannot afford the luxury of talking past each other. We gotta talk with each other.
Secretary, I'm sorry we couldn't get to the Twitter question today.
You can submit it to me.
Of course. Well, thank you so much on behalf of Bumpers College, University of Arkansas, and the law school. It's been an honor.
On behalf of the Chancellor and Dean Veda, I would like to invite you to join us for a reception in the first floor in the law school atrium. While you're there socializing and enjoying some refreshments, I invite you to take a look at one of our signature spaces in the law school, the 6 Pioneers Room. That room is there to honor the legacy of the first 6 African-American students to matriculate to the law school. We're the first university in the South to integrate. Diversity is something that we are quite proud of here at this institution, diversity in fact, so that we reflect what our communities look like. But we also like to celebrate diversity of thought, and it's exactly like what programs like this lecture series help us do. Secretary Vilsack, thank you for enriching us with your words, and please join us all downstairs. Thank you.